Hello, welcome back to Meraki Unboxed. My name's Simon Thompson, the host of the show. Wonderful to have you with us once again as we get into 2022 and our first session today talking about technology. Obviously, we had recently a very good discussion with Jen Kirkpatrick from our sales leadership organization talking about her own developments through the course of her career. And we had some really exciting tips and suggestions from her about how to progress your career. So if you're into that kind of thing, you're interested in doing just exactly that, do go back and have a listen to that last episode. And of course, we do have now a very large number of episodes in the can for you to go back and review. But today, we're going to look at one of our products which doesn't always get as much attention as the others in the lineup, and that's Systems Manager, our mobile device management product. Now, we are very keen to try to mix up the technology and also the personalities and people that drive our business. And the ideas that we have for these shows, they are often generated, of course, within Meraki itself, but they do also come to us from outside. So we do get suggestions that come in from our customers, from our partners, from technology enthusiasts who just want to hear something about the Meraki business or about a particular part of our technology. And if you would like to contribute something to this show and have it potentially included, and maybe even be on the show, I would absolutely welcome that. You can find me online very easily. I use Twitter most of the time, and I'm on there pretty much every day. My handle is @MerakiSimon. So do look me out and say hi. Just let me know what you think of the show and any ideas that you've got to share. All right, so let's get into today's episode. As I said, we're talking Systems Manager, and joining me to help me with this discussion, we've brought in a customer of our product who has been with us for a very large number of years. So Joff Owen, I would like to welcome you to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Simon. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board. And tell us a little bit about tell us what your job title is and what you do, and the name of your organization, of course.
Sure. So I work for Compass Group. We're one of the leading food service providers in the world. And I work in a sector which is like a division of our company called Compass Digital Labs, which is the technology delivery arm of our business in North America. And my title is Field Technology Architect. So I help build platforms and solutions for Compass.
That's pretty exciting. That sounds like it encompasses a number of different technology areas. Would I be right?
Absolutely. We are a very diverse company covering multiple segments of the market space.
Great. Well, so we'll get into that discussion with you in just a moment because we really want to hear all about your own experience with the product and how it applies itself in your business in that real world. That's what we're all about here, bringing it to life. But just as a recap for everybody, I mean, Systems Manager, it's a really important part of our product lineup when it comes to managing not so much the network, but actually the devices that connect to that network. And for us, it really is a key component connecting all the layers of our zero trust network access elements into Sentry integrations with Meraki. So this gets really technical and complicated, but it does integrate with our MR line, so the Wi-Fi, MX, that's the security appliances, and of course the switches as well. So we have this ability to provide configurations, settings, and applications to devices. We can quarantine them based on their status. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we can do with this product. And actually, it's one of those ones where on the surface, it looks really simple. And frankly, it can be very simple the way you deploy it, but it can also go pretty deep as well. So we have some pretty good integrations, tight integrations with some of our more advanced security products, like Umbrella, which you have integrated with Meraki, Duo, Cisco ICE, some of you I'm sure will be familiar with, and Secure Endpoint. So really, it's one of the components that helps us build that SASE architecture that we have assembled at Meraki with the various different components. So, it's one of those products where I would say, like everything with Meraki, you just jump in. You just start using it and you give it a try and you see how it could be potentially useful to you. And of course, what we wanted to do was talk to one of our valued customers using it every day to really understand how they are taking advantage of it. So with that, Joff, I mean, you mentioned food services groups at Compass. Could you just maybe elaborate on that a little bit? Just give us a sense of what you mean by that and the breadth of it.
Sure. Um, well, Compass is the parent company. Compass Group, the parent company is based out of the UK. Our North American head office is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where my leadership, where my manager and my bosses work out of. In in regards to the overall organization, we're Compass Digital Labs. We provide services to three of our core sectors or divisions within the business and industry, so food service within business and industry, higher education, and the healthcare and community living sectors. So those are our three core areas. We also have, remote camps and um, um, other businesses that operate within the Compass Group, but those three are our primary focus within Compass Digital Labs. So, and to Compass Digital Labs in 2016, we formed Compass Digital Labs in Canada, and we saw a need for front of house technology, and in providing a team of people that could deliver the solutions to the business, and take a real, we had our traditional IT department on the corporate level who understood the whole corporate back end of stuff, but on the front end, when we have 10,000 plus retail units across North America, there's a big front end component out there, and it was really time for this new technology company to grow within Compass Group. So with that, we started our mission statement of our mission is to create extraordinary experiences at the intersection of hospitality and technology.
Nice. I like that. So when you talk about front of house, bring that
Yes.
to life for me. So just help me understand, or help me picture in my mind of what that would actually be like in practice.
Sure. When we talk about food service, people think of your traditional brick and mortar stores where you go to a restaurant or a quick food or fast food coffee shop, pick up all that stuff. In our business, we actually operate within client facilities. So large organizations throughout North America come to Compass Group to operate their corporate cafeterias
Right,
or their
right.
corporate spaces for food. So we're an operator within our client spaces. So it's a different business model. So when it'd be nice to have a cookie cutter template out. For example, if we're going to be a coffee shop, here's your coffee shop, and we roll out technology as a footprint for each coffee shop, and they're all relatively built the same. With Compass, um, while we have the coffee shop brands that we can provide, each space that we operate ends up being unique because we are operating it within the space provided to us by our clients. So that in itself poses some challenges from a network perspective. If you think of our higher education and colleges and universities where we have vast campuses covering huge geographical areas with many food service locations throughout. So how do we build networks through those facilities and work with our clients and their infrastructure to leverage some of their layer one that they may have that would be unreasonable or very expensive for us to implement on our own. So it's very unique aspect, which creates a significant amount of challenges and creativity.
Yeah, I'm imagining that from what you're describing, I mean, really, you are expected to sort of fit in with whatever the brand identity is of the organization that you're operating within. So you at the same time are trying to implement, I'm sure, like any organization, as much standardization as you can for the sake of efficiency. So I can imagine there could be some interesting friction there when you come. Is that what you mean when you talk about the creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, we have, the constraints of PCI and what we can and can't do with the networking aspect of that for, managing that sensitive information. And then you have, our client networks who, we may have to, for example, put our router in the edge point, but traverse their layer two or layer three switching to
Right.
get to where we need to go, right? So we end up with hybrid networks.
Yes, I can imagine all kinds of permutations there, and that's something which you could have to figure out in every single case. So that's certainly a challenge from a scaling perspective. You mentioned, I think you said about 10,000 locations in the US. How does it expand globally?
So, I get from a interesting question, and I don't know the answer to that. What I can say is people. So in North America, we employ over 260,000 people work for
Oh, wow.
Compass,
Okay.
and globally we're close to 600,000. So we're big. If you look on our website, I think 2019 revenues were $20 billion. So yeah,
Yep. It's pretty
it's big.
sizable.
Yeah,
And how does that translate into the number of devices? So, obviously, I'm sure you've got a bunch of those based on what you're just saying there.
we do. So as we started with Cisco years and years ago, and then have been migrating off of the Cisco into the Meraki space. And in our Meraki environment, we're pushing close to 5,000 networks and near almost 70, 80,000 devices
Wow.
connected. So big space. And when we get even into the systems manager spot, we started 2018. I had one, and now we're almost at 15,000.
Oh, that's a lot. And so really the scale is what we wanted to talk about. I think was the main theme that we picked for this particular episode. And so I really want to explore that in a little bit more detail. So particularly around the challenges that get encountered around scaling. So before you had a systems manager, if we wind the clock back, what did it look like beforehand, and how did you handle it then?
Um, it was difficult. It required a lot of resources to manually configure these things and ship them out. It's wasn't ideal. It was, seemed kind of rudimentary how we were doing it. And while we were able to deliver on the product, there were significant limitations. Um, then we started exploring, we looked at MDMs. So internally within Compass, I said, okay, what MDM does Compass have as an organization? Have we approved? And it was a different product. So, okay, I went and worked with that, learned it, figured it out, got it to work. Okay, now I figured out a way that we can manage these things. During this time though, 2017, when I got asked to do that, 2018, we started at a higher level within the organization, in discussions with Meraki management, was talking about what, systems manager, what could we use systems manager? Could we leverage this? So we did a POC, a proof of concept. What can we make this happen? So I took my learnings from the previous MDM and applied it to Meraki, and it was quite enlightening just at how once you understand the concepts and how you apply them in MDM, when you come to Meraki, it was simple. What it took me 2 months to do in one platform, I was able to do in a day in Meraki and Systems Manager, and make the devices look identical between the two platforms. And it really blew me away at how efficient Meraki was at doing this. And so when I reported that back to leadership and said, hey, listen, here's what I built, it works. And here's one device, and they looked at it and they go, hey, great, Joff. So can we start rolling these out? And I said, yep, absolutely. We're ready to go. So that was 2018, July 2018. And just in that one product that we developed, we're at over 3,000 devices deployed now.
Incredible. And I find, I mean, we've done obviously a lot of episodes of this podcast by now, and we have heard this similar story many times over, and it's just music to my ears. I just never get bored of hearing it. Is that kind of revelation, that moment where you realize that actually this can be done in an easier way, because really that's what we've always been trying to do since the very start. That's how we, I think, gained our initial traction, was just by creating something. It wasn't brand new, it didn't exist before, but it never existed in a form that people could access and make and handle quite so easily. So wonderful to hear that. That's always a wonderful story. So, having got into using this product to help manage your devices, how are some of those devices actually used in the field? Have you got any sort of good stories to tell us there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So the product that I was talking about earlier was, we developed an application. So let me back up a little bit.
Hmm.
With point of sale, that's probably in the food service front of house technology. Obviously, when you go to a coffee shop, the technology is really the point of sale is the primary piece of technology. After that, we have our auxiliaries, digital signage, temperature sensoring monitor, IoT stuff. There's a bunch of other technology that goes in, but the primary driver is really the point of sale. And over the last few years, we've seen a shift in the whole point of sale retail space, right? There's been a lot more self-service put in, a lot more kiosks, and these types of things, which is really repurposing our staff, right? We're taking them, shifting them from a role of being a cashier and now being a host or a service associate within the space, being able to provide service to the customer as opposed to just ringing in their sale. So it's really, improving our guest experience on that level. But when we go back to the technology piece, it's those point of sales is really that front end. And like we were talking about the mobile, now we get into mobile apps and this whole food service delivery model, right? It's like people, oh, now I can order from, Skip or some of the other mobile applications that are out there. And that's when we were thinking, maybe we should look inward and say, what if we built our own mobile app and, created our own type of service like that? So you can order your food and come down to the cafeteria and pick it up. So, kind of why wait in line when you can do it online, right? So order online. And so that was it. In 2017, a leader came to me and said, hey, Joff, we're going to be creating this application that's going to go on an iPad and need to figure out how we're going to deploy this at scale. And that's really how it all began. We created a mobile ordering app as a proof of concept and created this application that goes on the iPad to receive those orders once they've been processed, and so that our operators know how to make them. It's a simple model. And in 2017, 18, that we started rolling out. 2019 got better at rolling it out. Scale started growing, and we thought we were doing really great. And in 2019, we hit like 280 installs, and it was like, wow, great achievement. Then COVID happened, and that changed everything.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And but what changed the most was society and how we order food. The adoption rate of mobile app grew exponentially. And so while we were talking like 280 installs in 2019, compared to what we did last year, where we're over, almost 2,000 installs, big shift. And really it was just demand, get it out there, get it out there, get it out on the counter, right? And we just ramped up resources to be able to help build the menus and the back end infrastructure to deliver to the business the product. And then on the solution side, hardware side, the deployment of these managed iPads, these purpose-built built appliances that really that's what we're leveraging Systems Manager for this case to do is really make a purpose-built appliance that's reliable and is just a device for our operators to use, and something that our team, which is small, and can support. And that's the key, right? One thing is you can roll it all out there, but when things don't work, they have to have someone else to call. So if we do it right, you get fewer calls and higher volume. And that's, over the last couple of years, we've really streamlined our process to ramp up, and COVID really accelerated that. And so as a result, while everyone, was dealing with, we can't sit in a restaurant and eat food and we can't do all this stuff. Instead of just closing our doors and saying, no, we don't have anything, we were able to actually put in these mobile ordering stations so people could order from their phone on their desk and arrange a pickup time. You could come in the morning and place your order for lunch at 8 a.m. and then go down at 11 to pick it up, and it's ready. And you get your notification and so that was probably the biggest success that we have with Systems Manager in the last year, for sure. It was just how we were able to really streamline the process and just crank these things out as quick as we could.
Wow. There's so much in what you just said. Thank you for taking us through that. I mean, I think, first of all, it's very interesting that even before the pandemic started, you'd already started on this journey of, using the technology in a more creative way to just change the way people interact with these businesses, these brands. And so the work that you've done during the pandemic, I mean, that's a lot of us, of course, got forced onto the back foot and forced to think differently about how we leverage technology to the best advantage. Sounds like you got super creative with it. So, I mean, what an amazing story to hear. And I'm sure it must have set you up very well for, when we do come back to, we keep hearing this term, the new normal. It sounds kind of old at this point. I think we've heard it so many times, but I think we all probably understand that things are not necessarily going to go back to identically the way they were before. So a lot of this effort is going to pay off as you come back, because you've got more of a hybrid setup. Some people will maybe continue to want to order remotely versus sitting down in a cafeteria.
Well, yeah, and so like what we were talking about before, we've done some proof of concepts in the last 6 months just to see user acceptance in corporate spaces for technology in how they order their food. So in some of our locations, we completely remove point of sale. There's no point of sale in the retail unit. There's no kiosks. You just order online.
Right.
And show it and pick it up. And we also, created a delivery app. So not only can you order it, but we have associates that can deliver, and they have an app that tells them that, hey, the order's ready to come pick up. They go pick it up, and so on and so forth. So, we're kind of building on that whole, investing in researching to see what works, what doesn't work in that space, but leveraging, like I said, the technology of Systems Manager. It really gives us that advantage to, on a dime, like, I need a new app. So, interestingly enough, we use a specific model of printer. The vendor went and changed their app last week, and not only did they change it, they actually created a new app. So while we push out the standard template out to all of our devices out there, lo and behold, the vendor goes and changes their application. So this app no longer works. Well, this is the app that manages our printer for the chits, that go with the orders. It's kind of a critical component.
Yeah.
So when once I found out, loaded it up into our test environment, added the app, ran some tests through. Yep, everything was great. Loaded the new app into Systems Manager into our production site and hit save. And within 2 hours, every device in North America just got the new app.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And you try and imagine the kind of disruption that could cause if you didn't have that ability. That would be a nightmare, I'm sure.
It would be, you would have to think about it. You got to send out email blasts to people with instruction sets as to how to go fix it themselves, right? And that would not be ideal. It'd be so disruptive. So having that flexibility to create this appliance that, like I said, that is a very specific purpose-built appliance that we've created that we can manage remotely, and not only triage and troubleshoot, all of that stuff is the tools that Meraki provides is very helpful in diagnosing where we may have some problems with the application, with the iPad, with the network. It gives you that whole end-to-end aspect of it, and that's really what we push for, right? When from the networking side, we understand that the dynamics of how there are different connections. When we talk about an iPad, you can connect it with cellular, you can connect it with Wi-Fi, you can buy an adapter that will allow you to connect it into an Ethernet network, and we use them all because, like I said at the beginning, right, we don't have a four-wall box store. We operate in unique environments and need to be adaptive. And so this connectivity flexibility, yeah, we have many different permutations of how these devices connect, but ultimately they all report back into Systems Manager. We see
Right.
them in the dashboard and we have a sense and idea. The sweetness of it, though, is when you have the iPad in Systems Manager that is behind, a Meraki network where it's connected to a Meraki access point, and
Yep.
through our router, we get the whole end-to-end of that iPad, and network traffic, the event logs, everything that goes with it. So that's been super helpful in triaging issues that are unforeseen things that we just hadn't come across in some of our unique environments. We throw the devices out there and it's like, hey, why isn't it working? It's like, oh, wow, this is, very enlightening. We had no idea that, these errors were happening or this misconfiguration existed. And so that's really that whole completeness of end to end really, I think, sets this MDM different than the others, because in the other MDMs, you don't have the link back to your MX, right? You don't have the
Right.
link back
Yep.
to your router to see that interaction. I mean, when I have a normal device and it goes through the device list, the client list within the Meraki router side, you get the heuristics of the device, but you don't get that association back to the device. You're just seeing it as a MAC address and an IP. That's all you know.
It's just
But
disjointed. Yep.
when you have that Systems Manager component, you get a whole other world of view to that device, which that's 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 the magic there.
Yeah, that's it, and that was what I was also touching on. I think with the recap of what Systems Manager has become, because it really did start with, that essential of being able to deploy apps and change the settings, but its integration with the rest of the portfolio is really where the power comes in, and being able to, as you said, to be able to draw that easy connection between this device is this node on the network. That enables you to just get so much more granular in terms of how you treat your clients and how you troubleshoot them. So it's very interesting to hear the way you tell that story. I think the other area that I was quite interested in was to sort of try to visualize these different scenarios that you support in Compass Group as well. So we've talked a little bit about. And what I've got in my head right now is this kind of campus type setup, because I'm very familiar with that. Working at Cisco, we're very familiar with that approach. But there are other types of scenarios that you're deployed in as well. Do you want to just take us through those as just to give us that sort of sense of contrast?
Sure. I mean, so we also have the point of sale space, right? So while we did talk about point of sale, and you know, that's out there. Yes, we have a lot of point of sale out there, being as large as we are. And so back in 2018, I said, okay, let's add a Windows point of sale onto Systems Manager and see what happens. And so we did and got that working. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, once we saw what the device looked at and it gave us, the applications that are installed and connection information and that level of detail from the Systems Manager of a Windows device, it was like, oh, wait a minute, we can push apps. So what are we missing here? And it's like, well, these devices don't have Cisco AMP on them or secure endpoint. So, okay, can we install that? Sure. So we went and got the AMP added in there. And now we created a policy that says, hey, if this device comes into the network and it doesn't have Cisco AMP installed, install it. And that's what it does. So, we're shoring up our devices. So while we rely on our vendors to deploy our point of sale, sometimes, the technicians may forget to install a patch, or they're missing, installing Systems Manager, or they're missing installing AMP. Well, we circle back and get them to do that. But now, if the minimum requirement is they just have to put Systems Manager on that. Once they put Systems Manager, we can then look at the device and make sure that it's compliant. And if it isn't, true it up and make it compliant. So it's really, it was surprising to our leadership when we started rolling these out. It's like, okay, well, the vendors are going to take care of that. Don't worry about it. And it's like, okay, well, we're just assuming that they're going to do that, but how are we going to audit them on this? And yeah, that's a good question, right? And so this is what the tool has really reflected on us is we're able to see these go out, and if it's missing something, it gets fixed automatically, right? And it just adds that layer of additional security, because really, we need to have the security endpoint on this. It's a Windows device. It's an important component, and it has to, because you can't just install it. You need to have the right executable to end up in the right group in the Cisco secure endpoint side of things, because we've broken out our point of sale by our different vendors and groups in there. And recently in Systems Manager, since prior to us having our calls in December, I did a big shift in our Systems Manager environment where, I used to have them all in one big container. It was funny, and we kind of joke about it to this day. When we created our first Systems Manager network within Meraki, our Meraki environment, we actually called the network Systems Manager. So
that's right. I've heard that before.
So it's like, oh, what network is this in? Oh, it's in the Network Systems Manager. Well, prior to December, I had over 15,000 devices in that network.
Right.
And it was getting a bit unwieldy. It's not that you couldn't do it. It's just unwieldy in the sense that I had, multiple vendors, like 10 different vendors, products all under one network. And it was just, while I could see everything all under one network, I couldn't really do the things that I wanted to do easily with specific product of the 10, right? So when you're talking 15,000 devices, you're trying to filter out and get the right ones. It just wasn't quite the right setup. And this is kind of the learning curve, right? The learning curve of understanding what works, what doesn't, and how things behave at scale. So going back to December, created all these separate networks, Systems Manager networks for the respective vendors, and moved those products into their own buckets now.
Right.
And now what I see is a much different and more scalable way to manage these devices. So it's that, the ease of use gets you in, hooks you in, and you get going on it. And then it's like, okay, this is exciting. But it's when you hit that tipping point, like 5,000 devices. That's a lot of devices. 10,000 devices in one network, that's insane. And when you get to 15,000, it's just like, it's just too big, right?
Yep.
Now, for multiple products, if it were one specific product doing one specific thing, Meraki would handle that no problem. And I think that's the beauty of the solution, is that I didn't hit an all stop and have to recreate and invent the wheel. I just needed to add some new networks, apply the policies that need to be applied unique to that product, and then just move the devices in. And that was it. Like, that functionality, don't really get that with other platforms. Like, that ability to fundamentally change its configuration that easily, but just by simply moving it in another network is huge.
Yeah, and it is a scalability thing, isn't it? And the ability, it doesn't matter how great the technology is, we're still humans. We still need to be able to logically break things down a little bit. And of course, there's also the implication of, every time you click a button, if it's the more devices it's hitting, the more, you're going to be thinking about that before you click that button, right? So you have this opportunity to, test out in advance. You have this opportunity to pick on a specific location if you wanted to, and just break it down in whichever way makes sense to you.
Yeah, so there was an incident that came out that was publicly posted, the Log4j issue that came out. Everybody's aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of our POS vendors, was leveraging that and, created a patch for it. The challenge that they had, though, is as you can appreciate, like, it's not like we just have terminals in one city, right? We have terminals in multiple cities across North America. So from a vendor perspective, patching for them would have involved technicians having to go on site to fix this, right? So early on, when we onboarded this vendor into Systems Manager, we had set some pretty high standards as to what we wanted them to do in order for them to get into systems manager. And as a result of us doing that at the get-go, when this log4j came up, they were able to create a patch. So, forward them the document from the Meraki help, which is fantastic, by the way, that, whenever you have things, just go into the help, see if it's there. If not, you can go to the community and see if it's there. So there's a lot of great resources to figure stuff out. Past that how to package an app URL from the help to the vendor, and they created a package, sent us to us. We added it in as an app into it, and then I created a security alert policy to adhere compliance. So, boom, put the policy in, and hey, you need the log4j patch, policy applied it. And so now we know how many of these devices received the patch, how many didn't, and the ones that didn't get patched, that we provide the list to our vendor and said, these ones aren't behaving properly for whatever reason. Can you please go check it out? And so now, instead of going to service thousands of point of sale terminals, we just gave them and said, hey, there's 100 here that you need to go take a look at.
Nice. Yeah, and that sort of flexibility, I think, is the thing we keep on coming back to over and again. And it's just wonderful to hear the sort of creativity in the way that you've gone about solving these as well. It's really very much what we aim for. Sounds like the dogs have woken up. We talked about these before.
A little bit. What other use case? So one of the other industries that we, really is about building, I look at systems manager. For me, it's about building products for our business, right? And so when I build a product for a business, I can give them an iPad, and everybody gets an iPad, and it's got, GarageBand on it and all the other stuff, but those aren't work applications, right? Those are personal, because the iPad is really built as a consumer device, but we're leveraging it as a commercial device because we can. And as a commercial device, that's where I really kind of get creative with it and basically strip out everything that they don't need and give them, web clips to training apps or specific internal products that we have that they need to go to, and make a very specific device that is reliable for them, that will work as they need it to work, right? They're not off doing Facebook or Instagram with, the social media stuff. They're doing their jobs with these tablets, and, the training materials there, all the stuff that they need to do their job is on this tablet, and that's it. And so once again, another scenario, vendors come out with a new app. We need to push it out to all the devices. It's going to roll out tomorrow. Well, that's okay. I'll push it out tonight. And in the morning, everybody's got the app. They're all good to go. So it's just so much easier when you have it templated out and we just add the tags and that's it.
And away you go.
Just does the things. Yeah.
I think one of the other areas that we were talking about when we were preparing for this, we mentioned obviously everything you've just described around deployment and management and the configuration side of things, but also the role that APIs are increasingly playing with Meraki. So, maybe give us a sense of how you've sort of started to think about using those to manage the devices, the applications, the scenarios you've described.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the beginning, like you said. Getting a device and an app onto a device in Meraki in Systems Manager is very easy, and that simplicity it kind of baits you and hooks you in. But the complexity of what you can do once it's in Systems Manager, that rabbit hole, it gets deep, and so. The API has been a very fun rabbit hole to go down. Starting out with V0, now we're in V1, in the iterations of that API. We have done some really neat things with the API. So that whole scale component, how does our business? We know that they're going to want to, we're reaching out to the business saying, hey, mobile. We have this mobile solution. They want it. We need to deliver it. Okay. So now our delivery managers, they need to order it in for the business. Well, we get the requests in, they would come in email, or we'd have some form and they come into our team and we disseminate all the information, grab the iPads, add them into the system, configure them, add the tags, and then ship them. And while we got good at it, it was, what could we do better?
Mm-hmm.
So in March of last year, when we were, ramping up, because we're looking at, getting ready for, the summer season, because it gets busy, from a technology side in Compass for us in the summer.
Right.
How do we ramp up? How are we going in 2020? It was very difficult for our team. We struggled to meet the demands of the business, but we were able to do it. And then in 2021, it was like, how do we do this better?
Mm-hmm.
And so we leveraged the API. And so what we did with the API is really, we created an internal ordering system using another product. So our technology delivery managers go into that system and create their order, and all the information that they're putting in their order is pre-populating the information that we need to actually configure the devices.
Oh,
So
nice.
once they submit the order, our one of our frontline operators will receive that request to fulfill it. So they get it, they go grab an iPad, look up, assign the serial number to it, and then hit provision. And then what that does is it sends a record to a table that the API then grabs. And within 5 minutes, because we have it on a sync cycle, within 5 minutes, that API script runs, and that iPad is now in Systems Manager. It's got the appropriate business name that it needs on it. It's got all the appropriate tags that it needs on it. So technician just turns it on,
Right.
and it's like configured, right? Yeah. And with that, we have the whole back-end ticketing log of how the order came in, how it was tracked, how it was created. And that helped us. I meant like that, by creating that whole process, we were just able to, like, we took our whole provisioning process, which took anywhere from 35 to 40 minutes per device. We got it down to under 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Even better
right?
then. Yeah.
Even better, right? So, and really the API allowed us to do that. We just inject it right into Systems Manager, and away we go. So then we took it from there, and it's like, okay, well, like the networking side. So let's look at the network. And we've done some very creative stuff with the APIs on the network side, disabling ports that aren't used over a certain period of time, the typical good housekeeping stuff that we've done. Yep. We've looked at things where naming conventions weren't set correctly and were kind of mismatched out there, and leveraging the API, we're able to do, large changes across the estate. When we talk 5,000 networks, right? Who's going to go and update manually 5,000 networks at one at a time, right? With an API, no problem.
Right.
We got it. We got it taken care of.
Does the heavy lifting for you. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
great.
and then one of the other, I think, unique things that we've seen with the API is probably, it's weird. Let me just try to explain it. So our vendors deploy point of sale, and point of sale gets put in, and hey, point of sale names the device kiosk 1, and the one beside it's going to be kiosk 2, and POS 1, POS 2. All right, so that's great, but that's for this particular business unit. When you have 10,000 business unit,
right?
which kiosk 1 is this? Because in Systems Manager, the device is going to come in with the host name and says, my name is kiosk 1, and I'm looking at it going, cool.
Of course, yeah.
And when you have 15,000 devices in a network, it's like, where did you come from? What network do you belong to? What are you? I see you're a point of sale device, and I can tell, through certain things looking at it, what vendor it is. But apart from that, I have no idea. It's just a device with a name in our network. So hence the API got real creative there. One thing we noticed is, hey, all the devices have public IP. Great. What else has a public IP? Or our MXs have public IPs.
Right.
So we created an API that basically grabs all the public IPs of our MXs and matches them to the public IPs of the devices. And if there's a match, take the name off of the router, because the router has the actual site location name.
Okay.
And add that, append that to the device in this network. So once our API runs, right, now it's like, oh yeah, you belong to this site, and we can easily look them up. And in the on the offset is I can either look at them in Systems Manager and there's the device, or I can go to the network on the MX side and look at the client list, pull up that device, and in the bottom right left-hand corner, you get all the Systems Manager information that's in there based off the device information. So I get the best of both worlds from the MX side of things. So yeah, that whole API naming thing was huge for us. Great, we got them all in the system, but we didn't know where they were. Now with the API, we know where these devices all belong, which is huge benefit.
Yeah, that's really smart, and it's reminding me of a feature we have on the MX. When you use templates and you're deploying basically the same setup on every location, then you need to be able to differentiate. That sounds like it's a pretty similar way of doing it, a very creative one. So nice idea. Definitely. So obviously we've talked about the way in which you've adapted and things have changed during the course of this pandemic period that we've been living through. When you think about coming into 2022, what's on your mind there? What sort of projects? How do you see what you've learned maybe during that period getting applied and helping to move you forward?
That's a great question, because we're still in January and trying to figure out what's the big play for this year. I know we're a lot more focus is going to be, I think, just clean once again, as I mentioned earlier, I took the big chunk of devices out of the Systems Manager network and then divided them into their respective vendor networks. I think from that perspective, there's a lot more that we can do in that space, and I'm definitely want to explore that. And then on the other big plays this year, I'm not quite sure what's in store for us or that I'm allowed to share.
No, that's fair. It's still early days as well. So
it is.
But I think one thing we can be sure of is that there will have been some great learnings during all of this time where we've been working in our respective homes and just dealing with that challenge that we'll be able to bring forward as we emerge from this thing. I guess as we start to move towards a conclusion here, Geoff, I would love to get some thoughts out of you for anybody who's listening, who's maybe, they're a Meraki customer, perhaps, maybe they're not even a Meraki customer. They're thinking about this challenge around devices, and maybe they're thinking about taking a look at Systems Manager. You've learned a lot. You've been through quite a curve. You've gone all the way from the very basic capabilities in the early days to this quite sophisticated, interoperability with our other products. What sort of advice and recommendations would you have for folks who are new to it?
That it's not as scary as it sounds, the MDM management. When you look at some of the other competing products out there, they can be quite overwhelming just because of everything that they're trying to offer as an MDM, right? And while Meraki offers many of the same things, it's a product within the Meraki space of other Meraki products, right? So that whole MX and the MS lines, right? The router switches, all that stuff. And so this integration is really that advantage that you get using Systems Manager, that end-to-end ability to see from the device all the way through to the endpoint of what's happening. You just don't get that level of detail with the other platforms. And the real hook is the ease of use, right? It's so easy to, two things really. You have, if we talk about iPads, for example, you have iPads. If you want to manage them with the whole secure thing, then you have to do the Apple thing with the Apple Business Manager and get those enrolled because it unlocks the secure features for it. There are also, though, so in situations where we work with vendors where we've created a custom app or they have a custom app, but we want to add them into Systems Manager, but we don't own them. They're not in our Apple Business Manager. So I don't have access to the secure profiles. So there's things that, I can't push an OS update to a non-enterprise iPad, but I can push the app, right? So if we've made an update to the app, we build custom enterprise apps as opposed to public apps.
Right.
So you can't go to the App Store to download. We build a custom enterprise, and we just don't want to give that file to the vendor to sideload onto the device. So we point them to Meraki and say, hey, enroll into the Meraki network. Once your device is in there, add a tag and you'll get the app. And so that ability to work with our vendors and their teams and their products and just tie into our network, let's get your apps rolling. That level of flexibility just makes it so much easier, all around. And then once we've got to understand the product and proof of concept, and we move on to the next phase, how do we harden it, lock it down, and do all that fun stuff to secure it? That's when we'd say, okay, we'll bring it into the business manager, Apple Business, and do the full security profiles on it.
Yeah.
I know that systems manager can do much more with the user and the whole Google and Microsoft and just haven't had a chance to explore those things yet. We've been busy on these other things, but those are definitely things of consideration for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you said, the products is going to serve, and you've described this really very eloquently through this whole conversation, is the product can be used in different ways to solve different kind of use cases, and so customer A may have a completely different way in which they can leverage the product to get what they need for their efficiency, their business model, versus customer B. So it's really, and what I like in what you're saying, and of course that you'd expect me to say this, but the fact that it is a relatively easy on-ramp, so you can start to use it at a fundamental level to address a specific need. And then, as you said, the rabbit hole goes pretty deep if you want to get down there. You don't have to go down there, but it's actually there if you do need that, whether through the product itself or whether integrations via the API.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I've learned a lot, and it's been really interesting to hear, I think, and this is why I love having these conversations, is how the thing has been applied in the real world with a real use case. To address the real challenges that different types of organizations have. So, Geoff, thank you so much for taking time and joining us on the podcast.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, these are always good fun. Well, thank you all as well for listening to the episode. I hope you found this one illuminating. And obviously, if you want to try Systems Manager, then the option is absolutely there. It's very easy to get started with a trial of any of our products. Just head over to Meraki.com. And we'll take you on that journey and as far down the rabbit hole as you want to go. So it's time to wrap things up. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Geoff from Compass Group, for joining us today. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. Until then, stay well, and we look forward to welcoming you back very soon. Bye for now.